Have you ever worked with a client who felt unable to regulate their nervous system? Welcome to the Coaching Revealed podcast. I'm your host, Austin Matzelle. In today's episode of Coaching Revealed, I'm joined by my co-host, Emily Terrani, as we interview Chris Lyon. Chris is a trauma-informed personal and relationship coach with over 25 years of experience, helping clients reshape their relational patterns rooted in complex trauma. Along with coaching, Chris is a board-certified hypnotist and certified applied neuroscience and brain health practitioner. This combination of coaching, neuroscience, and hypnotic reframing builds Chris's background in working with clients on regulation. In our busy lives, dysregulation can quickly occur and encroach on an individual's functioning. Chris frames for us how dysregulation occurs, that as powerful as our minds are, we also have to work with the nervous system with its own set of rules. In our conversation, we explore the neuroscience behind dysregulation and nervous system activation, with special attention towards PTSD and complex trauma. With an approach rooted in neuroplasticity, Chris explores how coaches can help their clients regulate in the moment and grow a skill set in regulation. Chris explores how coaches can work with different pillars of regulation, including breath, body, and mind. These tools and approaches can help coaches working with clients who are dealing with chronic stress, cortisol, and reduced motivation. You're listening to Coaching Revealed, and now our conversation with Chris Lyon.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am so thrilled to be here with my co-hosts, Austin and Chris. Welcome. I would love to just jump right in and would love to know what was happening in your work and career that led you to start to focus on regulation. How did you get interested in this area?
Well, great. Thanks for having me. The leaders that I learned coaching from in the late 90s and the early 2000s gave me a really strong foundation for my practice. But regulation wasn't specifically addressed when I was doing the coaching work. And I noticed that, I have clients who are diagnosed with PTSD or complex trauma. And I noticed that if they were having regulation issues, that interfered with the coaching process. And it was something that, you can't help them with if you're not focusing on some help with regulation. And also, I noticed that a lot of clients would initially focus on self-talk. And this is in areas of healing, improving, achieving. The self-talk would sabotage them and it would send them into discouragement and shame, which was counterproductive and it was demotivating. It was disempowering. So I noticed other therapeutic interventions that they were using may have helped them, but they weren't addressing those nervous system regulation issues. And it's interesting because together with my coaching, I had started using hypnosis, and it's a powerful modality that taps into the power of the mind, as we all know. And the mind is incredibly powerful, but it's housed in a body that's governed by a nervous system with its own memory and its own rules. So, to create lasting change, we must first help the nervous system learn and that it's safe here and now. So, it's interesting because with hypnosis, I would start hypnosis with a reassuring pre talk and plan. And then I would use progressive relaxation going into it. So, even before I was using nervous system regulation, like in a formal way, the hypnotists, all of the hypnotists, pretty much for the most part, were usually using co regulation and guiding people into their own regulation before they go into trance. So that was very helpful. And another modality that I used was NLP. And with NLP, we help get clients into a desired physical state to make progress. It could involve visualization, breath work, and certain awareness and adjustment of the body. So these modalities were very successful with the coaching process. And as I learned more, I continued helping clients integrate regulation into their daily lives as they managed stress and worked on their goals, as they dealt with the discomfort of fear and change, and also for the ones who had been diagnosed with trauma or complex trauma.
So, do you work with the same client and use all of these modalities? Do you integrate them?
Well, it just really depends on the client. You're going to have some people who may not be comfortable with hypnosis, right? What I notice is that people, if you help them regulate in simple and easy ways, you don't really have to introduce a new modality. You can just like walk them through the regulation. Even if you're not doing that, you're co-regulating. It helps with the work. But when I do use hypnosis with the coaching or NLP, I find that those are very powerful modalities with coaching and helping, of course, with regulation.
And what do you notice in the people you work with? How does this integrated work and the different modalities that you choose to tap into the sessions with them? What's the impact?
I would say in 2 words, better outcomes. And, it's interesting because with myself, I've had to work on regulation because I have complex trauma as well. So no shocker that I'm having clients as well who are dealing with some of the similar things. And I've noticed that clients, they have many stories. When I first start working with a client, they seem lost. They seem like they're stuck. They're suffering and they want help to create change now. And I notice as I work with the coaching and the regulation work, whether it's hypnosis, NLP, doing nervous system regulation directly, that they have been able to, amazing things. They've been able to get physically healthier. They've been able to insist on better connections in their lives. They have stopped undesired habits. They've started new ones that they've wanted. They've been able to have more mindsets and beliefs that aren't limiting. There are so many things that they've been able to accomplish. It's just mind blowing when I think about when you put in the regulation, how much that helps. And of course, we start with the co-regulation from the beginning, right? Because, as coaches, we're listening and we're validating. That's all co-regulation. You got a great start there because then you can help put them in a more resourceful state from the beginning. So yeah, there's so many, I could go on and on and on with how this has changed with regulation and co-regulation for clients, just better outcomes. It comes when cognitive resources weren't hijacked by survival physiology. It's just going to be better as far as achieving goals, client engagement, their resilience is better, healthier dynamics, and they are taking more consistent action.
One of the things you said at the very beginning of today was about how the body and the nervous system have their own set of rules. And so, kind of in tandem with this whole idea of regulation and co-regulation, when we are looking at the human body, how is it that like our body and our nervous system are wired?
Yeah, think of your nervous system as the foundation of your entire lived experience. It's not just carrying signals, it's the conductor of your energy, your emotion, and your attention. So we're wired with a brilliant safety system that is designed for our survival. And when we're dysregulated, it often becomes if there's a perceived threat, then it triggers a reaction and it bypasses the rational mind quite often. So it shuts down a lot of the cognitive function. That does impact response and decision making. So the regulation is about restoring communication and restoring balance, and it helps the body signal safety to the brain. So of course that thinking can come back online. And the autonomic nervous system is part of the peripheral nervous system. It controls involuntary functions like heart rate, breathing, digestion, and blood pressure. It has 2 main branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. So the nervous system regulation isn't about shutting off stress responses as some people may think. It's about being able to move flexibly between activation and calm. So it activates when needed and it returns to calm without getting stuck. And it's amazing how these two work together.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested, for our coaches specifically, when it comes to the functions of the nervous system, specifically the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, what's maybe some language that is good for us to get to understand and to be able to communicate with clients when it comes to recognizing what the parasympathetic nervous system is, what the sympathetic nervous system is, and how we begin building that relationship where we can be managing and controlling getting to activated and calm.
Great question. You could think of one of them having a job of being the accelerator and the other one having the job of being a brake. So this sympathetic nervous system is go time. It's fight, flight, focus, it's mobilization. It's what you use when you're being chased by a tiger or when you're stepping into something that, you're going to go make a speech or you're going to step into some type of competition. It's go time. We need it to meet deadlines or get out of danger. So the parasympathetic nervous system is for restoration. It's for rest, digest, repair, and connection. So that slows the heart and it promotes relaxation. And that's essential for healing. And there is a main component of the parasympathetic nervous system. It's a cranial nerve that runs from the brainstem, travels through the neck and into the chest through the trunk of the body. It's connected to major organs. It's called the vagus nerve. And the nerve regulates involuntary functions like heart rate, digestion, breathing, and of course, promoting relaxation. And this helps turn off the stress response and turn on that relaxation response. It's an integral part of the rest, digest, and recover functions.
I've never really thought of coaching in this lens, but essentially coaching is a space to help with regulation. Sometimes we're helping a client to tune into the sympathetic system, right? For motivations, achieving goals, figuring out why maybe we're procrastinating something that we have to take action on. And then other times it's to activate the parasympathetic system, calm down, not be stressed out. And this all ties into, is your nervous system aligned with what you want to do or what your intentions are? So what are some of the, factors that dysregulate us or the clients you work with?
We can think of dysregulation in two areas: external events and internal wiring. So we could break it down into something as simple as that. So with external, it's obviously traumatic events. It's not what happens. It's how it affects your nervous system. So this can be acute or chronic, and it can keep the nervous system stuck in a threat loop. Also chronic stress, relational conflict, sensory overload, noise, bright lights, things like that. Then there's internally past experiences that rewire the nervous system to perceive threat when there is none. And this creates that chronic state of alert. There's all kinds of different things that can trigger a stress state, depletion states, such as sleep deprivation or burnout, overwhelm, that prevents the nervous system from having the energy to achieve that equilibrium that you speak of. So there are people who are, for instance, neurodivergent. The brain's baseline settings for threat detection, emotional reactivity, and the sensory processing are set higher or more sensitively. And then you have external and internal factors that can create this combination, and that can create a chronic cycle. Let's say someone has high sensitivity and then there's a loud office, and then there's the depletion state. That can cause more potent triggers. So it's external, it's internal, it can also combine together for quite a recipe.
Ready to advance your coaching practice? Join the Institute of Coaching and tap into the world's leading resource for coaching science and professional development. With over 4,000 members across 130 countries, the IOC offers invaluable networking opportunities with an elite global coaching community and innovative learning to broaden your knowledge and keep you at the forefront of coaching best practices. Engage in cutting-edge learning events with world-renowned coaching scholars, from webinars and seminars to discussion groups, research projects, and more. Try any membership free for 30 days. Use promo code IOC Podcast and visit instituteofcoaching.org/join to get started.
What are the factors that indicate our ability to regulate? How do you help a client to regulate? How can we tune into the things that can help ourselves regulate when we're noticed we're dysregulated?
Right. Well, there are some basic things that help indicate that. One is heart rate variability. And some coaches do have their clients track that. HRV measures the small changes in time between the heartbeats. And those changes will show you how flexible the nervous system is or how balanced it is. And there was a 2024 meta-analysis of HRV biofeedback. And it reported that improvements in emotional regulation, anxiety, and depression markers and reductions in PTSD symptom severity were very significant. So This was encouraging. There are also that can be used not during the coaching process necessarily, brainwave patterns, and that would be high beta waves versus alpha and theta waves, and breaths per minute. And having your clients do just a simple breath practice would be amazing. It makes a huge difference. But also as a coach, we want to look at their emotional experience, their internal responses, their actions and habits. We can see how those change as we help them to regulate. So there are different ways that we can start out by co-regulating, and then we can talk them through their regulation, either in ways that we're helping to calm their body, we're helping them with their breathing. And I'll tell you the number one thing that I've used for, I would say at least 20 years, is when I notice a client is stressed out, right? It just you don't need a clinical diagnosis to see that. When you notice that, I almost always notice that their breathing is shallow. And so I know that they're not in a place where they can do their best in that process. Their cognitive function isn't online like it should be. So I'll point out that, hey, your breathing seems like you're breathing in a more shallow way. Maybe take a moment. We can take some deep breaths. And so I'm helping them, of course, co-regulating, but I'm helping them regulate just with the breathing. And then they naturally relax their body. You can help co-regulate a client by just relaxing your body and changing your posture and taking a breath. So there's all kinds of ways of doing that, but there are really easy ways of walking a client through in real time the regulation by just grounding and the breathing, loosening the tense parts of their body. I mean, there's so many things that are so easy, but you also can teach them some of that to use on their own as well. There are different things you can teach them. So yeah, there's so many things, and I think everyone needs to choose what's best for them.
It also sounds like you're speaking to how interconnected the external internal experiences or events are. If you're internally dysregulated, as the coach, creating that environment of safety and calm can help. And then a separate thought, as you're speaking, I have an Aura ring on, and it always tells me if my HRV is regulated. Yeah, I see you're wearing one too.
Mhm.
How do you incorporate the smart wear technology in it all?
You bet I recommend that. Absolutely. And they get on that right away. And they're like, well, I slept better. Or yeah, my HRV or my deep sleep or what. And it's so great when they can see, they have these metrics that they can see. And it's so simple. They put the ring on and it's an app, right? So there's different ways you can do that. But the Aura Ring is something that I do recommend. People have had great results from it. It helps them feel better about their progress. It helps them with confidence. Of course, it helps them regulate and become healthier. They do it when you use it for workouts, if that's something we're working on, if they want to, get healthier. So yes, that's huge. Just all kinds of different things you can think of. I don't like to process clients where there's certain things I ask them to do. I don't have much body awareness. So I have to work on that. So when people, like my mother was a yoga teacher, tried to teach me yoga, I really didn't have much interest in it. Okay. So as a hypnotist, having to go over to using the body with regulation, because that's what you have to use, I have a lot of clients who are going to push back on that because they may have some body issues. They may not have as much body awareness. They may not want to play. So you have to kind of show them the value of it and have them, start little things like in the moment. If I can help calm them down in the moment in real time with their breathing and just kind of adjusting themselves physically and loosening up some of the tenseness, if I can do that, then I can help them do that on their own time, the regulation in other ways. I can help them with their own practice and set that up. And we can put some accountability in too. So that really closes the loop for them.
Yeah, it feels so holistic and very aware of the individual's body and where they're at in every single facet. When you're working with clients, do you start out with working from this space of regulation? Or how do you bring up the idea of regulation and co-regulation with your clients? And how do individuals maybe respond to this type of coaching approach?
Some of them are a little hesitant when I talk to them about nervous system regulation, and I'd like to address why. A lot of them have complex trauma, and when you talk about things like taking a moment, slowing down, breathing, and mindfulness practices, I'm just going to say this. A lot of people won't say this, but it's very threatening to them. It can be very uncomfortable. it can cause some problems because then they can get discouraged. I don't get to have that. I don't get to do that. When they sit in that space of just observing, being mindful or trying to focus on their breathing, all these other stressors come rushing in to fill that void for so many of them. And it's really difficult to see that happening with them. And they're discouraged. And, a lot of people buy into the fact, not for me. Can't do that. So I start them out really slow. I always start by co-regulating at the very beginning. I'm talking with them. I'm adjusting how I am. I'm validating all of those things and how my breath and everything. It's co-regulating. A lot of acknowledgement, guys. Acknowledgement is a master co-regulator, period. It physiologically changes the other person. Powerful stuff. So if they're feeling regulated more during the sessions, it's going to earn trust. So I'll ask them to start in little bits. I'll just ask them. I have in my client library 5-minute meditations. Of course, I have non-sleep deep breaths, longer ones, and hypnosis. That 5 minutes, just a 5-minute morning meditation, start out your morning, right? I will ask them to, based on where they're coming from, I'll ask them to do certain things that they try little bits. I never do the same thing for every client. I always listen to me. If I think maybe that, I'm hearing they love to walk or exercise, I'll ask them to take extra long walk, and maybe focus on some of their breathing. I really kind of listen to if even weight training is a mindfulness practice. People don't know that. I'll work with that if I have them, if they're doing that, sure. So you always kind of want to listen. You meet the client where they're at. We know this. And that's what I do. And then I see what I can suggest to start with the regulation. And then we go from there and grow a bigger practice of it. I'll be working on nervous system regulation for the rest of my life. I think it's great stuff.
It sounds so powerful because you're helping these clients, these individuals, especially if they have experienced a lot of traumatic events or if they're highly sensitive, you're helping them build a safe space where they're able to regulate for themselves, maybe for the first time. So that's a really sacred space to be working in as well, to be helping people feel that way. I'm wondering, another one of the terms that we see in your work and in the space overall with people working with their nervous systems is neuroplasticity. And so curious to see kind of, what is your working definition of neuroplasticity, or how do you view neuroplasticity when it comes to helping clients and individuals regulate their nervous systems?
Yeah, I think a big part of my job is to help clients enhance and create neuroplasticity. Huge. Basically, the brain's ability to reorganize and program itself by growing new neural connections, but also strengthening the existing ones that we use. People are doing that as they continue to learn, experience, repair, and adapt. Now, this includes pruning. A lot of people don't realize that, which refines the brain's networks by eliminating unused or weak connections. And you can think of maybe limiting mindset, a habit that's not desirable by the client. So we're teaching them all the time about, and I know these are buzzwords, the rewiring, reprogramming, things like that. But the more we value nervous system regulation and recovery, the more consistently we rewire ourselves, and we're able to reach these goals and make these really important changes. The basic pattern to rewire in ways that serve you is to have a focus and intention on what you're wanting to change, and then you have emotion and repetition. So we were wired when we were young according to that, what we were focusing on, and maybe our intention to be safe or to make something happen, and then had the emotion about it. And when some stuff happened to us, same thing, it got our focus, our emotion. And if it was repeated, then, that's some wiring right there. So yeah, it requires that kind of awareness. It's easy. Everyone can do it. And you can do it at any age. It can be very healing as well. I really double down on the talk about neuroplasticity for sure.
Switching gears a little bit, we've had a number of discussion group conversations within our community about how a coach can regulate themselves to show up to coaching sessions. So I'm curious what your go-to techniques are if you're noticing that you need some regulation before you're showing up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that for me, it would start with grounding. Grounding tells your system that you're safe. And so the grounding first, and there's really easy ways to do that. Just put your feet on the ground, put your hands on your legs, and just sit in that feeling. I do have a grounding technique that I use. I teach it to clients. It takes 2 or 3 minutes, and people are actually a little heavier for a few minutes after they've done it. So it works pretty well. But grounding, doing some breath work. Breath work's really easy. I don't like to complicate it. You can do pranayama breathing. You can do box breathing, all kinds of things. But what I look at is the respiratory sinus arrhythmia. And I know that sounds complex, but it's a healthy and desirable rhythm. It energizes with every inhale and relaxes with every exhale. So what I do is if I want to be calmer, I'm going to breathe out longer or more vigorously. Now, those are two basic things, grounding and breathing out longer or more vigorously for a few times. Do that maybe for a few minutes. That's just really, really easy to do. But you also have to kind of get away from everything else and set an intention to focus on holding space for the client and working with them to the best of your ability. So if you set the intention, you do the grounding, you do the breath work, fantastic. So that's some kind of simple stuff that I'll do before a session. I do other things separately, on my own as far as regulation, all kinds of stuff. That is something that you can start out with very simply. Also, you can look at sit and feel the tense parts of your body and then feel them relax. If you want to, you can breathe in, peace and comfort and breathe out the stress and tension. But really, you can focus on making those lighter and looser. It really does help out a lot. And then you're ready to go when you're working with clients. You're already regulated enough and you can help co-regulate them from the very beginning.
Is there a starting place or a particular question that you ask your clients to check in or see how they're feeling? Especially you said that not all of your clients are, signing up with you to voluntarily, regulate themselves. It's something that you're introducing to them. So how do you ease them into that if that's not something they're aware of before getting into the session with you?
When I introduce a concept or idea to a client, I always like to see if I can explain it to them in a way where they will value it first. I had a therapist years ago who, when I was in the middle of talking about something that was really intense, she would stop me, full stop, and ask me how I was feeling in my stomach at the time. Completely would shut me down. It was confusing and it threw me off, and I didn't really have any reason to feel what's in my stomach when I'm trying to get something across. So I let them understand the value of it first. So I show that if I'm doing the co-regulation and I do little, mention something to them about their breathing, or when I'm talking to them, they become more relaxed. I may mention some things about co-regulation in ways that can help them understand that they can get into a more resourceful state on their own, because they're getting into a more resourceful state during the process, in the session. So I can explain to them, hey, you can get in a more calmer state where you can use your mind better, and here's what happens. And then I actually explain sometimes to some people how it changes your brain. It's healthier for longevity. It makes your brain healthier. It shuts down fear centers more. It helps you with your cognitive thinking. If you stress to someone, the stress hormone cortisol is being released in their body more than it should be when they're under stress. When you explain the damage that does, then somebody can value it. The inflammation, sure. But we're talking about inflammation of the brain, not just the body. We're talking about brain fog, less energy, less motivation, fatigue. So when I tell them that what this can do for them, it helps them to value it. And if they try it out a little bit, they can see how that works. I also, again, I like to put accountability into it. I like to follow up and ask them how it went, what they were able to do, and how they felt after. But yeah, always ask them how they feel during the session is good, because it gets them to have an awareness about their feeling. And then they can start thinking about how they can process it or how they can deal with that in a productive way.
And then what does it indicate to you if a client conveys that they're experiencing somatic or cognitive resistance to a regulation technique? Like maybe they can't let go and can't get rid of the dysregulation?
The first thing I ask them not to do is to say, I'll try. The reason I ask them not to say I'll try is because as a hypnotist, I learned that when you say I'll try or I'm trying, that you're telling your mind it may not work. But just to say, I'm going to do this. So I'll ask them, can you do this 5 minutes a day? Or when they say, I really don't want to sit and do a body scan, it's not comfortable for me. I'll say, okay, you know what? You've done a lot of sports. How about you spend 5 minutes, put on some music, 5 minutes stretching. And some people are more comfortable with the stretching. Some people are more comfortable like, okay, when I'm stretching, I can do some breathing. My huge thing with regulation for me personally is music. And it always has been. I mean, one of the things that saved my childhood, and so I'll suggest you guys, I'll get so creative just listening to them. I'll get creative about what they can try on their own. If somebody has the body image, why not just tell them to listen to some music and just shake it off and move around just for a couple of minutes? And then once they've done that, then they can focus maybe on the breath for a couple of minutes. I am fine with a 3-minute practice with nervous system regulation with them starting. I'm thrilled about it. And they can tell me about it and how they felt afterwards. And that's what I like to focus on, how they felt afterwards. And I talk to a lot of my clients when they do these things. Some people go on the rebounder, all kinds of different things, whatever fits them. And they'll tell me, well, I was worried about this or upset about this. I just let it go. And I can tell they're doing that with the work that we're doing and talking this through, but also they're doing the regulation work. It's so powerful. And I think why not use it together? But yes, I do a little arm wrestling with clients about the regulation, and I absolutely understand. I get it. So there's no judgment.
I know within your work on regulation, there's the approach where we're utilizing the breath, there's the approach where we're utilizing the body, and there's the approach where we're utilizing the mind. All these three kind of larger areas or pillars of ways we can be regulating. And so would love to just get a little bit into what are some of the more common ways that individuals could regulate from one of these backgrounds, maybe starting with kind of the breath. How do you framework for people utilizing breath to regulate?
Well, with the breath, and I don't want people to make it any more difficult. Really, if they have some breath work they already do that they appreciate, maybe they do that in the gym. They have something they already do. I just ask them to do that, maybe do it for a longer amount of time and an extra few minutes. But again, I like to keep it really simple. I tell them that when you breathe out longer than you breathe in, that it calms your body. It actually sends signals between your brain and heart to calm your system down. So I could get into some extensive breath work, but I like to keep it simple. So I just ask them to breathe out longer and maybe even more vigorously, like breathing in through the nose, maybe holding for a moment, and then breathing out as if you're breathing from your mouth through a straw. Longer, maybe twice as long. So if you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for a couple, and then breathe out for 8. So just that's an example. And I can walk that through with them really, really, really easily. So that would be the breath work. To me, that's pretty basic. Again, if they have a certain type of breath work they'd like to do, we focus on that. I know about different kinds. But just keeping it simple, I think, is the best to do with the breath work.
Yeah. And so that's breath. How about secondly for body? What does like a 30,000 foot view approach to body regulation kind of look like?
There's so much for body regulation. You can start with your posture. When somebody starts with their posture, you can have a really stiff posture, then kind of closed. So if you kind of like open that up and put your shoulders back, but even if you change your facial expression, that's regulation. Just starting with something like, so I don't like to make it difficult. There are all kinds of things you can do with the body. I like when people can relax their body, period. Now, I tell them, when they're with me, we're trying to relax the body. We're trying to get them grounded, do a little breathing. But when they go and do things on their own, oh my goodness, vagus nerve stimulation. You want to be doing a lot of that. You can do a lot of that with movement, dancing, swaying, stretching, walking. The founder of EMDR discovered that walking in the park helps to calm the nervous system. looking from right to left. There are lots of somatic practices, like I mentioned, grounding. There are body scans you can do. Grounding, the body scans signal safety. There's so many things you can do physically. And the other thing too is people don't realize that with like cold exposure, they say that's so good for you and regulates it. When you do extreme cold exposure, it can really dump a lot of adrenaline to your system, and then you're like, wait a minute, why am I not feeling calm? And that can be a problem for people who have complex trauma. So what I tell them to do is apply some cold to around your eyes or your cheek, maybe a cold pack or just a cloth that's wet and cold. That actually helps calm the system. It helps calm your heart, and it does absolutely activate the vagus nerve. So there are so many things you can do, even humming, to signal that you're safe and to downshift into that relaxed, calm space where you can use your cognitive function better. So there's just a ton of things you can do. I can give a talk on that for probably a few hours.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know if this fits into necessarily the body or the mind, but a big thing that I'll end up doing for regulation is simply changing what my environment is. So getting up and moving to a different room, going outside if I've been inside all day, whatever I'm able to do to kind of change that just physical environment that I'm in, I've found has been very useful in terms of getting out of that specific headspace. It's almost like the visual field becomes cues for what I'm thinking internally. And so just moving into that last component then for regulation, what about utilizing the mind for regulation? What are some areas you see that?
Well, I think what you just mentioned was body and mind. I think it's amazing to go and get away and get a different scene. And you're moving differently too, and you're going to breathe differently that way. But as far as the mind, mindfulness is important. Just being present as an observer is really, really healthy. And you can use that for really powerful regulation. And again, the mindfulness, if somebody has difficulty with it, you want to do it in small parts and build that muscle. It's really important to do, and you can do it. Being an observer in the moment, if you can do it just for a bit or you can increase the timing on it, is wonderful. I would say that there's a couple of things that we don't realize are such really powerful tools that we can use to help regulate with our mind. And to me, I think if human beings use these more, you can get through just about anything. One of them is humor, and the other one's gratitude. With the mind, use the humor. If you want to look something up that's funny, remember a funny moment, and laugh. A lot of laughing. That is immense regulation. Gratitude. Now, if you're starting to do a little regulation, you can move into a resourceful state where you can feel more gratitude. But if you start by just feeling gratitude and thinking of the gratitude, it's just going to spread through your whole system. Those are two powerful, powerful resources that people don't use enough. Also, giving yourself patience and grace. Sometimes doing that can regulate you in an instant. So my answers about how to regulate with the mind would probably be different than maybe some other people. But those are some points that I would emphasize for sure. Oh, and visualization too. Visualizing ourselves navigating a stressful situation with calm. People know that some of the greatest athletes have visualized what they were going to do, their different plays at different moves. And visualization is just incredibly powerful. So there are different things you can do. Hey, EMDR, hypnosis, really, really powerful modalities as well. So
I feel very lucky because whenever someone brings up visualization in athletics, when I was in high school, our cross country coach had what we called Mind Gym. And basically, before every single race, we would all go and visualize how we were going to do during that race. Ideally, if we had time, we'd have walked parts of the course or at least the finish of the race too. And so the entire exercise was to imagine how you'd feel at mile 1, mile 2, mile 3. If there was a really big hill, you would envision yourself running up the hill with lots of energy. And we would do that for every single race. And so I found that to be so, so, so helpful.
I have worked with many athletes and they've used this. And again, better outcomes. It's just amazing. So yeah, that's, I think that more people should value that. And that is a great way to use regulation with the mind.
Also, the amount of times this year when I've been going through hard things, I've said, if I don't laugh about this, I'm going to cry. It does bring back, it gives you some control or sense of control and power in the situation because you can find something and grasp onto it and not just be a victim of the circumstance, I guess.
It's for sure empowering, absolutely empowering. And it gives you kind of a different feeling about the whole situation, which is fantastic because then you're approaching it from a different way completely. But yeah, that humor. I mean, you can't beat it and there's nothing like it and a powerful resource. Absolutely.
So I know you've kind of alluded to this, and I know we've talked about this in offline conversations, but there is a distinction between the type of work you do and then what a medical provider would do. So, what are your boundaries when it comes to identifying if this is something that's in the domain of coaching or if this needs medical attention?
Oh, if I have a client that is dysregulated or they're impaired, any of that, I'll try to talk to them to see if I can get them to, get some calm, to try to calm down. But I will absolutely recommend that they go work with their therapist or psychiatric nurse or psychiatrist. If they're not working with one, I'll recommend that they go and they do that work. If I think there's a clinical issue, I'm going to look for that. And if it's something that seems that serious that they can't get a hold on it, they can't get regulated, I'm absolutely going to use guidelines to refer them in a very thoughtful, careful way where I am still providing support for them, especially to in the referral process. That is very, very serious. So that's not something that I'm going to think, okay, well, I need to be responsible for that. No. I do feel better when people tell me that they're working on regulation with a therapist when we're doing the coaching process. And that's cool because then I can always go back to and refer to that. But yeah, I've had that happen a number of times, and it's something you really should be responsible about and you really should watch out for. And it's important to be asking them where they're at and kind of watching how they're breathing, how they're moving, how they're responding to what their situation is, and ask them what they've done, what their experience has been, how they're feeling. Just be really responsible about these things. Very, very important. And I've said before, I just refer people to the ICF referral document that they have. That's very, very helpful. I think that's the best thing to do instead of just listening to me. I think that ICF has some really good guidelines for it.
What is the most valuable part of this work for you?
I would say, and this is interesting because this is one thing that does promote regulation, is doing something that's purposeful. This is a big purpose for me when I went to my first therapist many years ago. She told me after 4 or 5 sessions, she said, I've been practicing for 27 years. And she said, you have the worst childhood I've ever heard of in my life. I was like, oh, okay. Did not know what to do with that, guys. I did not know at the moment what to do with it. But I was like, and I hardly even could feel it. I was like, oh, as time went by, I chose some people to work with that helped me so much. Some of them were coaches. And then I decided to become a coach. And it's been so rewarding for me to be able to help people the way I needed help. It's been so rewarding for me to work with people who benefit from regulation, who benefit from being in a better place to be able to make the changes they want, to have the progress that they've always wanted and more. So it's very purposeful for me. And the regulation for me has been a life changer. It has changed my whole life, and I would never go back. It's just, I can't stress the importance enough.
Yeah, the things that have impacted us when we find that solution or what improves our own quality of lived experience, it's when we then realize how powerful that is and want to share that with other people. So can see that kind of, that line between some of the things that you were told by an initial therapist and now the work that you're doing now to be supporting other people in their journeys towards regulation. And it's such powerful work. So just really appreciate all the work that you're doing in the space and all the people you're going to be able to help touch and their ability to regulate. For someone who's coaching a client who's working regulation or someone who's working on their own regulation, are there any type of milestones or places that someone can notice that their practice in regulation is beginning to become easier, or their practice in regulation is starting to work for them as an individual?
What comes to mind is agency, that you get in the driver's seat rather than being in a passenger seat. That's how it feels, with the clear decision making, healthy relationships, peace, and physical and mental health. Those can improve in marked ways, better quality of life, increased longevity. But you know it's working when you notice the gaps, the space between the trigger and your reaction when that widens. And this is a big thing. You see that you're responding rather than reacting. That's a real important part of my coaching practice. And if a regular trigger, like for example, comes up, someone can choose to breathe or relax or soften their body, do some tapping, something. And it's more empowering. People who regulate feel more at home in themselves and less at the mercy of their emotions. Different ways you feel it, you can see it by your experience, the way that you're feeling, the way that you're relating with others. You can also track it by journaling as well. So there are a bunch of ways that you can see how this is working. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I would love to double tap on the difference between responding and reacting. What is that difference for you to kind of notice?
Well, it's interesting when I'm working with a client, they'll tell me about something that happened, and previously in that type of situation, they would have a reaction. They would take it personally. They would be emotionally dysregulated, or they would shut down. And then I hear that they're having a response. Well, I thought about that, and yeah, no, that wasn't my problem. So I just went ahead and said, hey, that's, you take care of it, or it's not something that I'm going to focus on. And I love that, because to me, it's, instead of internalizing things, internalizing things is great. When something happens, sure, you validate, right? But if you stay internal about it, you are going to sponge all kinds of stuff up that's not yours. And that's going to be stressful. That can dysregulate you. So when you're doing that, you want to remind yourself, and I do this with clients all the time, is to go external as well and think, why would this happen? Why would they do that? As an observer, taking yourself out of the equation. And then you can get some really good insights that way. Now, if you clicked into the observer mode, that's regulating. So then you can get this information and realize, I don't have to soak this up. I don't have to internalize it. It's their problem. The other thing is, I teach clients to deflect things that aren't theirs, right? So it's not just being internal. Sometimes it's external as well. So, and I do want to note real quick that, regulating also can get you from a low mood and low energy into a better place too, more resourceful and productive, if you are doing regulation that gives you energy as well. So we have that ability too. So yeah, hope that helped.
Yes, no, absolutely. And thank you so much for your time today, answering all of our questions. It's been great to get to talk with you. For anyone tuning in to the podcast who might want to follow along with you, Chris, and see what you're doing or learn more about your work, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, they can go to coachlyon.com, Coach Lyon, and they can check everything out there and contact me from there. Thank you for asking. This was great. You guys are awesome. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you for being here. It's a super interesting conversation.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We'll be back for the next episode of Coaching Revealed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Coaching Revealed, brought to you by the Institute of Coaching. You can learn more about the Institute on our website at instituteofcoaching.org. You can stay up to date with new episodes of our podcast by liking and following Coaching Revealed. You can also find us on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X with the handle Institute of Coaching. We also love hearing from our guests, so please reach out to us with thoughts you have on this episode and any questions you have about coaching. Until next time, this is Emily Terrani with Coaching Revealed.